Why do you think we need to drill in the Arctic?
Well, we need to drill in the Arctic to find out what potentially may be there, because despite the current glut of crude oil in the world market, most projections looking 10, 15 years out on a global basis still forecast very dramatic increases in oil demand that cannot be met by the current levels of supplies available. So in a sense, this is at least trying to assess how important the Arctic may be. And our U.S. Geological Survey, a number of years ago now, still believes that a substantial portion of the world's remaining undiscovered oil and natural gas lie in the Arctic.
So then what do you say when people come out and say it's hypocritical of President Obama to be supporting climate change, supporting Alaska, but then all of a sudden allowing drilling in the Arctic? That cannot be good for the environment at the end of the day.
Well, I think you have to separate the local environmental implications of drilling from climate change, because the reality is that when carbon dioxide is released in power plants and by automobiles and other industrial processes worldwide, the way that carbon dioxide goes in the atmosphere concentrates in the polar regions. So much of what is happening in climate change in the Arctic is really because of what is happening in the subarctic, or even here in the United States. Now, when you start talking about the risks of an oil spill from drilling like we had in the Gulf of Mexico, that is, of course, a very severe risk in the Arctic, because you may have to clean up oil if that were to occur, in ice conditions, which make the cleanup much more difficult, much more expensive. But if it's done properly, you know, there's been drilling in the Arctic and Norway for long times now. I personally believe it can be safe, but it needs vigorous monitoring and vigorous regulation. But keep in mind that Shell, that's getting ready to drill now in the Arctic, you know, they bought these leases from the federal government under competitive bid. They were awarded in good faith. So to now turn around and say, after Shell spent nearly $7 billion, that you can't drill, you know, would certainly not be very good public policy.
Well, sure, but they're going to spend a lot more if they wind up drilling there, because at the end of the day, it's very expensive. We still have inventories here in the U.S. near a record at 450 million barrels. I understand that oil demand is going to grow, but also demand for alternative energy is going to grow as well. What are the chances we're wrong and we don't need as much oil as everybody thinks, and this is just going to be destroying the environment?
Well, I think a key point here is drilling for oil in the Arctic. We're not talking about drilling oil, even if we found it. We're not talking about oil that is probably going to enter the market anytime soon. All the major oil companies that are drilling in the Arctic are looking at the Arctic as part of a portfolio 10, 20, even 30 years from now. So we shouldn't look at the short-term market considerations today and ask why we're drilling in the Arctic. Actually, probably nobody would drill in the Arctic today if they weren't already there or had already invested, because you probably need $90 to $100 a barrel long-term to make this oil economic to the oil industry. So it is a thing that the industry is looking at as a long-term way of helping meet global supply and demand, which still are projected to be 10, 15 years from now, to be 10 to 15 million barrels a day higher demand than we currently have in the world today.